Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. If you're watching on YouTube, Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and I'm joined by THI publisher Andrew Jones for another video. Andrew, how you doing, man? Good to be back on here with you.
Always. Love doing this. We talk almost every day, but there's something different once we do. Either when we're there in Chapel Hill or on site for a game or doing these, it's always on the spot. So we got to be sharp.
Exactly. I gotta say, sometimes I feel weird asking how you're doing. Like I said, we communicate just about every day, but you gotta.
How are you doing, AJ? We just talked 20 minutes ago.
Yeah,
an hour and a half ago. 4 hours ago.
Exactly.
I haven't changed too much in the last 30 minutes, Jacob. I'm doing okay still.
I appreciate it. Good to know.
Hope you are too.
Of course, I appreciate it, AJ. But back again to talk some UNC football. Of course, obviously Carolina's in the middle of preseason practice right now, getting ready for their season opener against Syracuse here in just about 3 weeks now. So not too far away from the season opener in Kenan Stadium. But AJ, we're here back on our three things grind, as I like to call it. We're here to talk about UNC's defense, discuss three things about them since they're in the middle of practice right now, AJ. And the first thing I think that we need to discuss, it's something that we've discussed a little bit in some of the videos we did about a week and a half ago now, but the defensive line, I think that's the main concern, the main question mark, maybe not only for the defense, but maybe for the team as a whole, is what is that unit going to shake out to? Obviously, we've had a lot of media availability with Mac and a lot of the players as well. A lot of the guys have pointed out Ray Vahasik, Jaleel Taylor, Tamari Fox is guys that they feel confident and comfortable with throwing out there. But AJ, that's not a lot of guys, and I guess quite frankly, that's not enough. Would you agree with that? That Carolina just obviously those three guys aren't necessarily super proven yet. We've seen some glimpses of what they can do, but now that they're the guys, I mean, there's not a lot of other people back there that I don't think Mac and any of the coaching staff would really feel comfortable throwing in just because they haven't really played a ton.
Yeah, I would say those are the three guys. Jay Bateman told us a couple of months ago that Jaleel Taylor was one of their 11 best defensive players when last season ended. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of tracing the last few games, maybe Mercer State, the Temple game. Jaleel played really well in the Temple game. And I think they feel really good about what he's going to be able to give them. They're kind of moving those guys around a little bit, playing on the nose and regular defensive tackle. I think Jaleel is more of a nose, kind of like Aaron Crawford was. He's a guy that can occupy blockers. And I think he loves the idea of occupying blockers. He understands his role really well, very smart kid. Vahasik is a guy that, man, when you ask kids on this team about who's going to surprise you, Ray's name comes up. Mm-hmm. When you ask them about him, then they say superhuman strength. I think Bateman said superhuman strength, as well as Tamari Fox, two guys up front, superhuman strength, which is kind of a good thing to have when you're on the defensive line. But with Vahasik, he's just got this motor. And I'm looking forward to seeing him get a lot of reps in a game just to see exactly what that motor is, because I think that motor is going to get tested. You hit on there's three guys right now. They're going to need more for the reasons we've talked about in some of their videos. The reason they want 10 offensive linemen is because you could lose a couple that test positive during the week and they're out. Man, if they lose one or two or three of these guys from the defensive line, they test positive, they're in some trouble. It's not that they don't have talent behind them. They do, but it's so unproven. And an example of that is Jaleel Taylor played the most snaps of any returning defensive lineman on the team last year, and he played 255. So Aaron Crawford and Jason Strobridge were just under 900. Yeah. So that's a difference in how much experience this group has. I think they're pretty comfortable going to battle with Tamari Fox, Ray Vahasik, and Jaleel Taylor. I don't think they're comfortable with what they have after that. Although I do think that if they were to project down the road, they love what Christian Varner can become. Mm-hmm. If they were able to tap the full potential of Zach Gill, I think they would be pretty comfortable with whatever he could give them. He needs to give them 15 or 20, 22 snaps a game this year, quality snaps. Mm-hmm. Then when you ask guys about the defensive line, they dip right into true freshmen. So when you're talking about Miles Murphy, and you're talking about Clyde Pinder, and Murphy's name comes up more than Pinder's, generally that's an area on the field where true freshmen take the longest to be ready. So if they're using one or two true freshmen for 20, 30 snaps a game, I think that could be a problem. Even though those kids might be pretty good, I just think that game in, game out could be an issue. Example, if you ask Jaleel Taylor about how he improved last year, he immediately starts referring to all the mistakes that he made early on and how he got chewed out. and he had to go through that to get to where he was at the end of the year. Tamari Fox played a lot early, then kind of went through a period where he wasn't playing as much. Then he played a lot again later because he had to learn. He had to make a ton of mistakes to learn. Mm-hmm. They had Strobridge. They had Crawford that could make up for some of that stuff. They don't really have that right now with some of those guys. So if they have to use Murphy, if they have to use Pinder, and quite frankly, Varner as well, they're going to make a lot of mistakes early on. There aren't as many games this schedule to learn from. So I think it is a position of concern. They're going to be, if they're average, I think that's a pretty good goal for this group to be an average defensive line in college football this year.
Do you think it's Carolina's probably, as a team as a whole, I kind of mentioned it, but do you think that's Carolina's probably biggest concern in terms of position group on the entire team?
Yeah, well, it's the least proven. Even we talked about tight end in the offensive podcast, and at least Garrett Walston is proven. I mean, Garrett does what they ask him to do. There's no issue there. They just don't throw the ball out to him. People will judge him and say, well, he's not very good. He only had 9 receptions. So
it's not, yeah.
He does what he's supposed to do.
Exactly.
When you see short yardage touchdowns, we have thousands of photographs that you and Jenna took last year. Every time there's a short yardage touchdown, guess who's one of the first guys to congratulate the guy who scored the touchdown? Garrett Walston. So he did his job. On the defensive line, they just don't have guys that have done a lot. Even as much as they like Vahasek, he was like snaps. That's just not a lot. So there's a lot of learning still for these guys to do. I think that their growth will be quick. I think Taylor and Vahasek and Tamari Fox will be a lot better in week 5 than they are in week 1. The younger guys will be better as well. But I think they'll make a giant jump. If they can get through those first few games and the defensive line doesn't really hurt them, they're able to escape and win, I think they'll get better and better and better and be decent by the end of the year. Decent by what I think that the program standards are. But the rest of the groups have established veterans, some star power that group doesn't yet have.
Absolutely. I'll definitely agree with you on that, AJ. Moving back a little bit towards the back end of the defense, I guess you could say, Carolina's secondary. I would think the last time, let's see, I mentioned it earlier, but we did a video about a week and a half ago talking about the secondary a little bit. And I think that next morning, Carolina announced that DJ Ford, Javon Terry, and Bryce Watts were opting out of the season with fears with the coronavirus and whatnot and everything to do with that. So, AJ, Carolina, bang, there's 3 guys in your deepest group on the team that are gone. DJ Ford played a lot of snaps last year. Obviously, Bryce Watts had to sit out last year after transferring Virginia Tech, and Javon Terry was a pretty key part of what Carolina did on special teams, at least in the punt return game and whatnot. So, AJ, how does Carolina absorb losing those 3 guys in the secondary? Obviously, they've still got a ton of guys they feel confident with rolling out there, but how do you think they'll absorb that? And do you think that'll hurt them a lot, or is that if you're going to have a few guys opt out, maybe best case scenario that it be in that position?
Well, you hit that on a nail on the head right there. DJ played about 530 snaps last year, but a lot of them were after the injuries hit. So had they stayed healthy, I don't think he would have played 500 snaps. Bryce Watts played a lot at Virginia Tech, and I think was expected to come in and challenge. But they have so much as it is. I don't think they're going to feel those losses unless a bunch of guys test positive. That's the caveat. That's the but that we're going to have to talk about all year long, because let's say 6 DBs test positive one week and they're out. Then you're going to feel the loss of not having those guys around. But I think they'll be okay. They've got a lot of talent. Connor McMichael is very likely going to lock up one of the corners. You got Patrice Renee, the other one. But they're going to play so many of these guys. Storm Duck's going to play a lot. We found out Tuesday when we talked to Mac Brown that Trey Morrison, who was a nickel as a true freshman 2 years ago, moved a corner last year, which he says helped him a ton because he really learned a lot about, press man coverage under Dre Bly and just says he's so much better at nickel now where he's moved back because of what he learned there. But Mac told us they're working him out at both corners, both safety spots, and nickel. A lot of this is because the just-in-case scenario, what might happen if guys get injured and also test positive. And Trey's so good, it's going to move around. If a slot opens up and they need him to go there, they can. I also think Ja'Quarius Conley is having such a good month in practice. And if you see him, he looks like he's been in a college weight program for 3 years, that he could be a guy that can handle some of that nickel stuff, which will free them to move Trey around. So they're going to be in really good shape at corner. They're going to be in really good shape, I think, in nickel. And then at safety, as long as Miles Woolfolk stays healthy, he was playing so well last year when he got hurt. Cameron Kelly, his first career start against Clemson, then he goes down and he's out for the rest of the year. They've got a lot of guys that are back there. They have a lot of guys that have started games. Hollins was like 5,000th on the depth chart when the season started, and he ends up playing one of the most important roles in their win over Duke.
Yep.
Talk about coaching a guy up and getting him ready that week, but it's a testament to DeAndre as well that he was able to do that. So there's a lot of confidence in the secondary. There are a lot of guys that have unique skills that can help in whatever scheme they're using, whatever they're trying to employ, a lot of interchangeable parts. So I think that of all the position groups, that one will manage this quirky season better than the rest just because they got so many options, and that's with those three kids opting out.
Yeah, it's so crazy to think, too, when you just look back to last season and how – I forgot what game it was. Maybe it was that Duke game that you talked about where Carolina literally just had nobody to put in there. I remember Jay Bateman talking about it in one of his press conferences. Yeah. It was just like he looked around like, what do you want me to do? Like he literally didn't have anything left with all the injuries they had. So a complete 360-degree turn from what we saw for a majority of the season last year when Carolina just had nobody that they could really throw in there that had ever played the position before at the college level. So AJ, last topic I want to touch on, last thing I want to touch on, linebacker position. Obviously Chaz Surratt, Jeremiah Gemmel had some really, really productive years last season. I think Jeremiah, obviously Chaz got a lot of the accolades and a lot of the reception, but I think Jeremiah Gemmel was one of Carolina's most consistent performers on the field, and probably not only on the defense, but as a team. I think he was one of Carolina's most consistent performers and kind of a guy that flew under the radar. But we're not here really to talk about them. Obviously, you kind of know what you get with those guys. Eugene Asante, Kadri Jackson, we've heard a lot about them last year. We've heard a lot about them and some of the fall camp press conferences and interviews we've had so far. AJ, what can fans, what can you expect to see from the likes of Eugene Asante and Kadri Jackson this season? Because I think they're going to have to put something in. They're going to have to be able to play more than they did last year to relieve the likes of Chaz and Jeremiah, because they just can't go in there and play 800, 900 snaps again this season.
Well, Mac and Jay Bateman have already said that they want those guys to be able to, give them 20 snaps. Mm-hmm. They didn't say technically the figure 20, but they're thinking around 20 snaps a game because they want Jeremiah and Chaz to be fresher in the fourth quarter. But what's interesting is Tuesday when Mac told us about some of the players getting work at other positions in the just-in-case scenario of guys testing positive and just trying to bolster your depth by being able to move guys around. When he told us that Chaz is getting some work at defensive end, it's really that hybrid outside linebacker spot because he can rush the passer. One of the reasons that they're comfortable doing that is because of how much Eugene Asante and Kadri Jackson have improved and how they're ready to get on the field. Mm-hmm. I mean, theoretically, you could move Chaz into one of those spots opposite Tamon Fox. You could have Gemmel and Asante on the field. So this could be a situation where Chaz can still get 70 snaps, but maybe Asante gets 40. And Gemmel gets his 70 or 65, and Jackson plays 15 or 20. The fact that they have them ready to get on the field and they trust them means that they could do more stuff. And I do think that the linebacker situation will be sharper in the fourth quarter. They'll be sharper at the end of the year. They're not going to take as much of a beating. But it gives Bateman a lot more flexibility with what he does on the defense because you got to know where Chaz is. Mm-hmm. You got to move him around now. Can you imagine? You need Chaz over there, so he's going to go. He's so smart. He's going to learn whatever it is they ask him to do. They say, okay, you need to learn these 5 things about that hybrid position. You need to master it. Chaz will learn it, and he'll master it pretty quickly. So think about having the opposing offense is so uber paranoid or focused, rather. I won't say paranoid. Focused on where he is and trying to run stuff away from him. That just makes the rest of the defense better. And Asante, when people talk about Asante, they say he's as fast as Chaz. He's sideline to sideline, the kind of speed that Mac brought to Carolina in the late 90s when they had those great defenses in 96, 97. They were the best sideline to sideline defenses Carolina's ever had. Asante brings that element to the field. And I think that makes this group potentially, we could be talking in November about how this might be the best position group on the team because Chaz is high first round material. Gemmell is incredibly solid. I know you're a big Gemmell fan, and you're working on a piece about him. He's really solid. He calls stuff. He's a very smart kid. He's a little bit bigger than he was a year ago. I think we'll see some of that pay off on the field. And those other two kids just have amazing upside. Quick, Kadri Jackson, though. Last year there was that open practice, a night practice in late August. I think it was about 10 or 12 days before the season opener. And we're going around looking at different position groups, and I see Jackson, number 8, running with the defensive backs. And I texted you, and Jenny was there shooting photographs. We're like, we got to find out what's up with Kadri Jackson. Why is he with the defensive backs? Well, it's because he can cover. So he was working on coverage skills. You got a linebacker who fit right in with the DBs. He didn't look any different than those guys, just maybe a tad bigger than some of them. And he's one of these 2 backup linebackers. I think they're in really, really good shape, and I can't wait to see all these kids play.
AJ, just before I let you go, do you think this defense as a whole is if you're a Carolina fan, do you think this is a defense as a whole that you should be excited about, especially when you consider over the past 5-6 years, it's been a while since Carolina's really had a really solid defense that's really done some nice things statistically, at least. Do you think this is, as a whole, this should be a defense that Carolina fans are as excited as they've ever been about, just before the season starts, obviously?
Yeah, it's been since before Larry Fedora arrived, to be honest with you. And even the 2015 team, they made some plays, but at the end of the year was not very impressive what they did against and then against Baylor. It was atrocious. I can be better than the best defense they've had in a while. In part is because I think that the parts kind of fit what Bateman wants to do. In year 2 of Jay Bateman, I think he can scheme more. They got to get something up front. They got to know what they're going to get. Even if the up front is average, they got to know they're going to get average. The problem is if the front line is wildly inconsistent. And if Taylor is really good one game and they get blown off the line of scrimmage the next game, that will affect a lot of the stuff that Bateman can do. But if they're just average and they pretty much know they're going to be average every week, Bateman's going to have a scheme like crazy. He's going to have a field day with all these athletes moving Chaz around with what Tamon Fox can do. Don't sell Tyrone Hopper short. A senior has been hurt a lot, suspended a couple years ago as part of Shoegate. The kid has a lot of talent, a lot of range. He's kind of a big kid. And, seniors play for a lot. His kid thinks he can play in the NFL, so he wants to get out there in the field and show that. So I like the fact they've got a lot of dudes they can put on the field in defense. These are guys that can run. They play with tremendous energy and making plays. They have that playmaker mentality, which is a big Bateman, Dre, Blythe thing. You talk to the DBs and they say, Dre's teaching them not just to keep the receiver from getting the ball, but go get the ball yourself. Make a play, turn it into something. Connor McMichael said, pick 6. Dre's teaching them, get that ball and score.
Yeah.
So I think that mentality, they might give up some big plays here or there, but they're going to turn stuff over a little bit more than they have in recent years. And therefore, I think they'll be more fun for Carolina fans. And their upside, I believe, is better than any defense they had since Butch Davis was there.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot to be excited about when, like you mentioned, with all that talent and athletes and having Jay Bateman at the helm. I mean, I think if you're Mac Brown, you're feeling pretty good about how that defense is going to shape up, especially as the season goes on, AJ. But that's going to do it for us, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you as always. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like it. Be sure to share it as always. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.
Thanks.